ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Comments from the applicant? Okay. Any comments from the public regarding this? I think we have sound.
I think so as well, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, being no further requests for comments regarding item number 4, I entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second to close public comment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment period is now closed. Okay, these 4 items are now before the board for discussion, comment, and voting. We'll vote one of these items at a time, and we'll go through them again, and this is for board comment. If at this time you have any questions for the applicant or for Brad, this would be the time to ask those questions and get clarifications. Okay. Request number 1 is that unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance.
I would like an explanation of that.
Sure. So essentially, this is a very old neighborhood, and very broadly we have rules to help mitigate the impacts of older, more established neighborhoods not having necessarily the lot dimensions that a newer one would have that would accommodate our wide front setbacks. And in this neighborhood, because it's for the front setback, that works along Howard Street because we use a block averaging to accommodate these older neighborhoods. You get to essentially line your house up with the way that setbacks work along that side of the block. Unfortunately, because Cypress 3 is so short before it hits another road, the block there doesn't really give them any averaging to work with. And so the intent of the ordinance is essentially written so that older lots like this will be mitigated, and 99% of the times they are, and the setbacks work out just fine because we find an average. But here, where there's nothing to average it out against, the strict application of that front setback would in fact create a reasonably unworkable situation for them to build on.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad about this? I think you also mentioned that with the strict application of the setbacks, we'd be looking at an 8-foot wide house.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And a grand total of 300 square foot possibly?
Something along those lines.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is R6, is that right?
That's correct.
And is this lot big enough otherwise to build on?
Yeah, it's not deficient in any way to build on, except for from a practical sense with this setback.
I also, if you look at the map where the property line is, you have an additional 15 feet of grassed area before you hit the pavement. So even if we grant the variance, it's going to look, going down the street different than the property line. There'll still be a fairly wide swath of grass next to the house, even though it's only sitting back 8 feet off the property line.
That's correct. It'll look quite normal.
Okay, any other questions for Brad or for the applicant about the unnecessary hardship that would result from strict application of the ordinance? If not, entertain a motion on this requirement.
So moved.
Second.
So moved to what?
In the positive.
In the positive, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't repeat all that.
So we have a motion and a second to the affirmative that strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Or you want roll call? Let me take, isn't this a roll call?
Yeah, we should do a roll call for this.
Okay.
Kip Paraguay,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Merle,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Ann Shout,
Yes.
Edward Bellis,
Yes.
Ross Beebe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Second requirement for the granting of a variance is that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but are there any other questions or clarifications that you would like from city staff or from the applicant? If not, then we would entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I move that we find, based on evidence submitted, that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Or no, roll call. I want to get this moving, obviously. Dinner must be waiting.
Kip Paraguay,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Merle,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Ann Shout,
Yes.
Edward Bellis,
Yes.
Ross Beebe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Item number 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. Any questions or clarifications required from the city staff or from the applicant?
Well, I might have a question about, do I understand that this is, this building is in progress? Is this building, excuse me, is this building in progress, or has it already,
It's a vacant lot.
it's a vacant lot?
And I'm sorry, I wear hearing aids too, so it's,
Yeah. He cannot begin construction on it until the variance has been approved.
To give a little bit of explanation on how this wasn't a self-imposed hardship, seeing as how they purchased, you can't you purchase the property with the existing condition, knowing it. Essentially, this is Habitat for Humanity, and the city gifts them lots to build houses on, and this is one of those lots that we gave them, saying, here, build a house on it. And yet the conditions of the house were not really favorable to, or of the law were not favorable to constructing a house, so it's really not their fault, it's mostly ours for not catching it on the front end.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Will the city of New Bern make sure that something like this doesn't happen again, because it costs us to grant a variance? If they knew that the property could not hold a certain type house, I think it should have been told to Habitat before they began thinking about building a house on this property.
Absolutely, I agree, and we'll endeavor not to make that mistake in the future.
Without the Board of Adjustments, can the city disregard the ordinance themselves?
No, sir.
So it would have to end up at the Board of Adjustments regardless?
At some point for this lot to get used, it would end up here.
Okay.
Yes. But, a more general solution would be to gift it to the neighbor or something along those lines.
Mhm.
But as it's already at this point, we are where we are.
Okay. Okay, with no further questions, I'll entertain a motion that the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner.
I'll make the motion. Hardship was not created by the property owner.
Okay?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on requirement number 3. Any further discussion? I'll get it right this time. Roll call.
Kip Paraguay,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Merle,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Ann Shout,
Yes.
Edward Bellis,
Yes.
Ross Beebe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Item number 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Questions or clarifications on that?
Clarification.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned before, we do have language written into the ordinance to attempt to mitigate the impacts of older lots not fitting our modern dimensional requirements. This is just such an outlier case. It's a weird one with the double frontage there, and the way that it sort of came to this board that it does fit in the intent of the language. It just isn't quite broad enough to capture it with the way that it's written. But I believe that it does conform very much to the spirit of the law.
Any other questions about the granting of the variance not affecting public safety or substantial justice? No further discussion. I entertain a motion on item number 4 that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further conversations? Roll call?
Kip Paraguay,
Yes?
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Merle,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Ann Schaut,
Yes.
Edward Bellis,
Yes.
Ross Beebe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
And we finally need a motion to either approve or deny.
Yeah, we as a board have approved all the 4 requirements for the granting of the variance. There does need to be a motion to grant the requested variance.
I move that we approve the variance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance as requested. Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Kip Paraguay,
Yes.
Dorothea White,
Yes.
Jim Morrison,
Yes.
John Merle,
Yes.
John Riggs,
Yes.
Richard Parsons,
Yes.
Ann Schaut,
Yes.
Edward Bellis,
Yes.
Ross Beebe.
Yes.
The variance is approved.
Okay. Are there any conditions that the board has thought about or any staff recommendations for conditions to the granting of the variance?
This staff has no conditions recommended.
Does the board have any conditions that they would like to impose on the variance request? Okay,
All right, then I think we're fine.
we're good. Okay. So,
Your variance will either be mailed to you or you can pick it up, whichever you prefer.
Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate the work that Habitat Humanity does.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your support.
Hey, Brad, do we have any other business that we need to discuss this evening?
We have 2 additional things. One is the agenda, the schedule for 2019. We didn't adopt one last year, and this is the first meeting of this year. It's in front of you, and wasn't in this present packet, but it was in the Board of December meeting packet. So if anyone has any opinions, need a date shifted, any outstanding obligations, or if you like the way that it looks, then we can just approve it.
Thoughts, comments about the proposed agenda for 2019?
I have a question on the April 29th date, which says it's adjusted for a Bern holiday. So I guess that's an adjustment to,
The meeting is this day, May 20th.
okay. Okay, is that an adjustment for the April meeting, or?
Yes, I think, so it doesn't conflict with Memorial Day.
Yeah. It's been moved back a week.
Okay,
So it'll still be on the Monday, and it'll still be here at 5:30. It's just a week earlier than typical, and the submission deadline's been adjusted accordingly.
okay, 12 months, I get it.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments about the proposed agenda for 2019?
I move we adopt the meeting schedule as proposed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further comments? I think we can voice vote this one.
Who
Can
was
we
the
not?
second on that? Okay, I thought, thank you. Yeah, we don't need a roll call.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we have a schedule.
And then
Okay.
there's one last item, and that is the election of officers, which I don't know how you want to handle that.
I don't know either. Normally the board does its business transactions and so forth in July. It did not occur this past July. And since then, the previous officers, I was chairman and Steve Strickland was vice chairman, and he has since resigned from this board. So we don't have a vice chairman. And I can tell you, I won't be here for the June meeting, so we need a vice chairman in position. So I think right now, I'm still legal as for my 2-year until July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So I would really think that right now, the appropriate thing would be to elect a vice chairman.
Would you like to accept nominations?
We will accept nominations for a vice chairman.
I nominate Trip Ewer.
He's not here to.
The guy that's not here.
Very good.
I think he's also qualified.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate Trip Ewer to serve as vice chairman of the Board of Adjustments. Any other nominations? We'll have a voice vote on the election of Mr. Ewer as vice chairman.
I move that he be elected by acclamation.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. He won't miss many more meetings.
I will spring the news on him tomorrow.
Okay, okay. Is there any other business, Brad?
That's it.
Okay. So, a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
for
out.
all coming this evening and giving your time to do the business of the board.